All right, good to be back in these chairs, man.
It's been a while.
Little hiatus, but back in the store. And this week, I'm surprised I had never seen it because action comedy is one of my favorite genres, especially from this era. But Midnight Run.
I don't even know where to begin with this one. So I think I told you when I was a kid. So I collected two types of movies, and one of them at different times. But when I was younger, I collected 50s science fiction films.
Right.
And then when I grew out of that, I was so all about action movies, and I even like wanted to be like I wanted to like go through the letters and be like, I need an A action movie, I need a B action movie, I need a C.
Like one for every letter?
Yeah.
That was like, stood for that letter, yeah.
And that's kind of how I came upon this movie, is that, I needed an M. And it was great. Like, it's like this and Money Train.
Right.
Rented it, watched it. My father was a big DeNiro fan, so I kind of knew about it. And I think one time he was watching it on TV, and I caught like one scene. But watching it, I was entertained as hell by it because it's so damn funny, and the action set pieces are really well done. The chase sequences are really well done. Then I realized it was Martin Brest who did Beverly Hills Cop, and I had recently discovered that movie.
Which is maybe the best action comedy movie ever.
Right.
So it's at least on the Mount Rushmore.
He knows how to blend those two, right? But at a certain point, I'm like, there's something really extra special about this movie, and I do think it kind of fits into, my definition of what I call kind of a gem, because it kind of sneaks up on you. But the way it goes, I could recognize that, it's got all of the things that I like about action movies and action comedies. But it's also got these moments where I'm like, I'm feeling something extra, and there's a lot of heart to it. And the level of intimacy between them that grows with them. And then there's just, the scene on the train where he talks about the watch.
Love that.
It became like if I was in an acting class and I needed to do a monologue, it would be that. And even as I write now, like writing screenplays, I just think about it like, what's my watch moment in this story?
Because you recognize the emotional honesty of it.
Yep.
Right. And it's like, and where it happens in the film is so great. It's so earned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it became one of those things where it's like, at this time in my life, like probably like high school age, if you were to ask me what my two favorite movies were, it was Jaws and Midnight Run.
Wow.
Without a doubt. Like maybe there's other movies that I like.
Did you keep coming back to it? Like we talked last night about there's just movies you kept watching at that age.
Well, and I it went into my collection, so I went out and I bought it.
Right.
But then it just became the one that I need to watch.
And you knew it so well.
Yeah.
But then you keep learning things.
And
about
I love
it too.
sharing it with other people.
Right.
Like, and my friends like knew me as like the guy who likes Midnight Run.
Right.
And just the banter between them. I loved doing those scenes. I mean, I know it so well that I can just quote it. But like, you lied to me first. No, what? And then it's like, yes, I lied to you first, but you had no knowledge of me lying to you. And at the river, you lied to me. So as far as you knew, you lied to me. And I can't even argue with that. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
And then the whole thing about the ulcer. Yeah. Like his character, like even just as an impressionable teenager, he was kind of like my go-to like it kind of like I wanted to be Jack Walsh. Like there was just something about his character that he was, at one time he's the archetypical tough guy action hero, but he has such a soft underbelly and a vulnerability and just the way that DeNiro plays it.
Dude, I mean, first of all, the introduction to his character is him almost getting his head blown off with a shotgun,
Right.
and he ducks.
Yeah.
So it's like right off the bat, his life is threatened in a very real way.
Yeah.
But he has street smarts. With the scene where, and first of all, it's just like Duke's like urging of him to reconcile things with his family,
Yeah.
right? And then when that scene finally happens, and there's this series of lines where DeNiro says, "What would he think about this?" And she's like, "He'd understand." He goes, "That's love, you know." I'm like, yeah, I'm like, emotional right now thinking about it, because it really has to do with the writing and his acting. I mean, to just like be that sincere, and your love for that person is that sincere, that you can find some sort of connection to that moment,
Right.
is really powerful.
And that they like, and just in there, the way that they argue, you feel that they had a relationship that erupted. Like they have lines where it's like the same old Jack, you get hurt and you just want to stomp on everybody else.
Yeah.
And then I don't need another lecture and all that stuff. And then the reveal that his daughter's right there. And just the way he's like, what grade are you in? 8th. Are you in the 8th grade? And just the fact that it's like, I have nothing, I don't know what to say. And you feel it just in his face and his mannerisms and everything, that he's such a good actor, that you feel every emotional beat. And reading about the kind of the making of it was, George Gallo wrote this great screenplay, like it was structured perfectly, but he was the one that was like, can we add this, can we add that? He added the watch thing.
Yeah, and reading about it, a little bit of it, it's like he based this on his parents, and he said that I don't think they realized how funny they were when they were arguing.
Wow.
And how they were so different about the one was emotional, one was calculated, one would always back one into a corner and strike. And it's like, it's so great. But then like and then Gallo says that one of his biggest Achilles heels is that he had too many ideas, and sometimes he couldn't rein them in. And he said Brest was really good, a really good collaborator, because he's like, no, let's make it about the story.
Yeah.
Like, and so anything that's funny is revolving around the story. Even the Yaphet Kotto stuff that and he's such an important spoke of this film.
Right.
His character and his performance.
Right.
But those are a bit like bits, right?
Yeah.
Like when he slides when he's at the diner, and what does he slide into the shot? I forget.
Sunglasses.
Yeah, the sunglasses.
Yeah.
It's just so great because it's off screen. I mean, and they work.
And the whole thing about how, first it's when I get my pay, I want to get a nice coffee shop.
Yeah.
Just the fact that he wants a
great
coffee
writing.
shop, right?
Yeah.
And then I have to tell you, a restaurant is a very tricky investment.
Dude, Grodin's ability to deliver those lines is amazing.
Yeah.
Under-deliver them. Like he goes for he's not trying to say, look how funny it is.
Right.
He's just such a good, realistic responder in a comedic scene.
Right. And he's never not funny.
Right.
Even when he's annoying, he's funny. But then that scene lands where he loses Charles Grodin, loses the Duke, loses everything.
Yep.
And what does he have in front of him but a coffee shop?
I didn't even think about that.
Right.
I did not.
He walks in, and the way that he is with the
and it's Tracy Walter.
Yeah.
Like to me, that's always Bob from Batman.
Right.
Although he's been in tons of other stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I'm like, oh wait, that's Tracy Walter, man.
But he takes out the cigarette. The guy lights the cigarette for him.
Yeah.
And then the glasses slide in, and it's perfect. It all kind of comes together. And I also want to say that there's something to be said where you got this action comedy dynamic, and it's this genre, and there's all these beats that you have to hit with the genre. and it's always going to lead to this big climax, right? And usually it's a shootout. And there's something to be said about the fact that, and I can only think of one other movie that does this, where you have all these elements coming together. It's got to be a big action sequence, and not a shot is fired, and it works.
Yeah,
and
it's
you're
tense.
On the edge of the.
Oh, it's suspenseful.
Seat.
Yeah.
But no blood, no bullets, and the other movie is notorious. And every time I watch it, I marvel at that, because it's always so easy to just like, and then he pulls out a gun, and then he's almost, it's going to be this like, true romance type thing. But I love that, and it works with the dynamic of the story, because at the center of this story is really just this strange kind of love story between the two of them, right?
Yeah.
And you can get over with that tense scene. The bad guy gets his comeuppance. He gets the Duke back. He's off, and he's going to get his money. And then you get the turn that in any other movie you'd kind of be like, well, of course he's going to let him go.
Right.
But something about the way this is.
Oh, but the fact that you don't think, but the fact that they trick you,
right,
is great.
Yeah.
And Grodin sort of resigns himself to it. He's like, yeah, I get it. But then it's like, no, I'm letting you, and it's like
the look on his face.
Yeah, man. There's something to be said too about. So you've got Mosley and the fact that DeNiro's been impersonating him the whole movie, which is just gotta be. First of all, someone steals your badge, right? It's almost like getting your gun stolen, and like
right.
It's like, man, and then they're going around pretending they're you and doing all this crazy stuff, and like and it's like the fact that he then is on a plane with that guy, and the look of respect that he has for Jack when Jack is talking about all the things that they can do.
You can get him on
yes.
this. You can get him
I mean, there's this look of like, where did we get this guy?
One of my favorite moments is they're wiring him up. He's putting on the shirt, and then he's like, what are you smiling at? I feel like a cop again.
Yes, I wrote that line down, man. I mean, it's great.
There's so many good players in it too. I mean, there's Dennis Farina.
Yep. The guy who plays his rival. I forget what the bald guy with the mustache, who basically is always competing with him, and then ends up going.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I forget his name, but
my God, he's in Dorfler, for Christ's sake.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna bother me. John Ashton.
Okay. Yep.
But yeah, Marvin Dorfler. Him.
Joe Pantoliano.
Joe Pantoliano.
God, so good.
When he lifts up and he's got the socks, the colored socks on, and he takes the money
the $1,200 out of that. I wrote that down. He goes, where did I inherit this reputation? Something about that line, man. It's just like, I don't know why I made him sound like Woody Allen there, but yeah.
And I think this movie got a kind of a reputation, somewhat of a bad rap when it first came out, much like Goodfellas, because it was so vulgar and there was so much foul language in it. But I can see someone watching it and being like, do they have anything else to say? But there's something about the lines and the way they do it, and just the level of intensity that they have when they're screaming these things at each other. I remember, like one of my favorites is, he's about to get on the train, and he doesn't like to fly, and then he's like, don't start with me now, or I swear to God, I will shoot him and dump him in a fucking swamp.
Yeah.
And then Grodin, and he's like,
yeah. And then he gives him the look like that. I wrote that down. That moment is brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I was just reading about this, and it's like maybe you've told me this in the past, but I didn't know DeNiro was going for the lead in Big.
Yeah.
I mean, whoa, that would not. I don't think
would
that
have been a
would have
completely
worked.
different movie.
It's sort of like Michael J. Fox and Eric Stoltz with Back to the Future.
Right.
De Niro and Stoltz are these method guys, and it's like, nah, we need like a buoyant, goofy, charming, and in touch with their inner kid,
right,
to make these movies work.
But with that, like, he was looking for something, not light, but he was looking for something that he can flex his kind of comedic muscles. But also, you know, this was kind of around the time where, you know, it was after he'd gained all the weight for Raging Bull. He did King of Comedy, does Brazil, Untouchables around this time. So it was kind of like his first, like, getting back into the leading man seat.
And man, he went through similar techniques with Taxi Driver, of like where he like hung out with a bunch of bounty hunters, and like, and it's just, he really wants to be the part.
And maybe that's it, because he makes that, as frustrated as he is with that life, and as much as he wants to get away from it, he makes it so lived in, and like it feels like a real thing. It doesn't feel like a movie job, right? Like it's just a character that would only exist in a movie.
Well, you know, that's the way to approach comedy, because the best improv comedy is when people are really acting like they are the people. It's not just about what they're saying. It's about feeling like this is real. And I feel like he's just, I mean, he gives you that feeling of this is this guy.
And I don't know if this comes from that or not, but you know, there's the scene at the beginning where he almost gets his head shut off, and then he has the run-in with John Ashton where they're arguing about it, and, you know, oh, look out, punch him.
Right.
But then when he takes him to the jail, like, he knows the guy he knows the clerk that's there. They have kind of like a rapport, like a back and forth, like a joking around. And then when he's trying to track down Mardukas, the way he goes up to, and he's like, hey, and come over, and they're talking, and he's like, I need the booking slip for it. And just that, you know, that he knows his life, he knows the way around it, he knows the people that he can talk to. And you feel, it doesn't feel like a movie scene that's written like, oh, he happens to run into this guy. It's like, no, this is a guy that, you know, he knows because he's brought so many people in before. And I don't know, I think there's so many good lessons here in terms of writing, in terms of character work, dialogue, the dynamics between two different characters and how they play off of each other. And it's hard because, you know, like I said, it would have been one of my two favorite movies when I was in high school. And then I don't want to say that it lost something on me, but, you know, you grow up, you get to college, you see different types of movies, and it was always kind of like that movie that I knew was there, but I'm afraid to go back to it because I don't want to watch it and feel like it's lost anything on me.
So how long had it been?
From watching this, probably a good 8 or 9 years.
Wow.
And even for this episode, I'm like, you know, do I watch it again, or
do you talk about your affection for it and what you remember? Yeah. And it did help. It did hold up for you.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know, and even things that I thought were going to lose their, like you said, where it's like you can see the strings of it being a bit
right,
like the whole thing.
And I meant the cigarette. Like, he kept taking his cigarettes.
Yeah.
Right. You know, those are bits, but they're still funny.
Even something like I need a nice hot meal is what I need. What am I going to buy it with? Dirt?
Right.
You know, just drive to the next town. And then that whole thing about how he gets the money.
Yes. Oh,
that's
dude,
a bit.
That's actually what I was going to talk about is, first of all, it's a bit like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yes.
Right? You've got the annoying guy, you've got the straight-laced guy, that's why it's funny. But when they run out of money and they're at that diner and they have just enough for coffee, and he says, "We're starving and you're buying cigarettes."
You have whatever you're gonna have.
And then when he goes, "Chorizo," he doesn't know what chorizo is, and then he goes, "I want chorizo and eggs." And it's so real. I mean, it's like, I want that. I want the thing that I just thought about, that I smelled, that I want that. And
Listen,
then
45 minutes, I'll get you a nice juicy steak, whatever you want.
And then when he says, "Let me do this, let me get the money," and he goes in, and the whole counterfeit thing, I mean, it was beautiful.
Right.
God, it was beautiful.
Even down to the, you're red. Did you dye your hair? Short for Red Wood. The last name's Wood. What's your first name? Bill. Thanks for your time.
I mean, he was like Joe Friday. Like, he was doing his,
Right.
And it reminded me of the scene in Analyze This where Billy Crystal had to convince them he was the consigliere.
Yep.
And he goes, "Consigliere." And he slaps him, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, "Consigliere." Like, kind of just, it's this, there was a part where DeNiro accidentally like ran into him or something.
Right.
And then he was sorry.
Yeah.
And he apologized to him. And it was like, he realized he needed to sell that.
Yeah.
Oh, it was good.
By the way, I hunted my whole life, and finally, about 15 years later, Robin and I go to Sneakers, and one of their specials was chorizo and eggs. And I took my best friend, Mike DeRogers, I took a picture of that. I sent it to him and said chorizo and eggs with the exclamation point. I couldn't believe it, and it's as good as they make it.
There's a hip hop song from the '90s by this guy Mike Zoot that was called "Midnight Run." I know it was because just how many movie references there are in hip hop.
Right. It's weird that it for me it feels like that kind of like that back pocket gem that no one knows about, but reading through it's influenced a lot. Like, this was the first time that Paul Thomas Anderson saw Philip Baker Hall.
Wow.
Who plays Dennis Farina's lawyer.
Right.
And
he was in his first film. He was the lead in his first film.
Right. And not only that, like,
and
his name in this is Sydney. And that's what his name is in Part 8.
Wow.
So it was a big movie for Paul Thomas Anderson. Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, when they were writing Pineapple Express, it was a movie that and you can kind of see that with the two hitmen, their dynamic.
Right.
Like the dynamic of the two thugs of Dennis Farina. That whole thing, like, I mean, the first time in the airport when they're kind of trying to shake him down, and one of them's looking at him, and he's just like, "Are you gonna propose?"
Right.
But then he's like, "That's a nice coat. What is that? Bullskin?"
Yeah. That's hilarious. And then that guy, when the other guy's on the phone, he's like fake punching him when he's talking to the boss,
and he's like kicking him.
It's cool.
Is this more on number one? Put more on number 2 on.
Reading about some of the things of this almost happened and all that, it's really interesting because it's really cool that it worked out like this, because it's like Paramount wanted to do it. They wanted Cher to be in it because they thought like the romance would be cool, and then it's like they wanted like when he said no, it's like Robin Williams was in talks about it, and that could have been cool, right? Mm-hmm. But and then I think Bruce Willis, but he really liked, Paramount pulled out, Universal took over. He really loved Charles Grodin's audition, and it's just great, man, because there's a different dynamic involved in the way he plays that character. He plays it for this honest truth that's not trying to do anything else but find the honesty in the role.
Right.
And that's where the comedy gold is bloomed.
Yeah, and I don't, as much as the What If game is fun, and Robin Williams might have been, I feel like it wouldn't be what it is without Charles Grodin. Like he was just the perfect foil for him.
He seems like an accountant too.
Yeah.
Does he not?
Right.
Like, it just seems like a very calculated, like, I don't know, just the way his brain works.
And everything about the way he sits, the way he moves, the clothes that he wears, and how he responds to everything, like the look of concern and disgust that he has for DeNiro when he's eating those chicken wings. When they don't have any money, and he's like, how much money do we have left? And he's like, the change falls down, and he's counting it, and the lady comes over, and he's like, how much is coffee? 53 cents. How much is tea? 53 cents.
Take a tea.
I'll have tea.
When he admonishes him for the bad tip, he leaves the guy in the dining car. It's like, are you really going to leave that tip?
That's 13%. These people depend on tips for a living.
Oh, man, I mean, as a server, I really appreciated that line, but it was just like, I mean, you know, they really do gain respect for each. I think it was Ebert that talked about like how they both were able to understand that they had a shared belief in what was right and wrong. And it's just, it's just really, really cool.
Something else about the train sequence, because it's not just DeNiro having that moment about the watch, but it's Grodin starting off that scene with Jack. What? How much further do you think we have to go? Talking business. And him having this dialogue, and him, I think one of the lines that struck me even as a kind of emotional kid that would sometimes get angry and lash out sometimes when he's like, you have two forms of expression, silence and rage. You know, that hits. And the fact that when he says that line, and DeNiro automatically is just like, and does it.
Right.
They figure out so much how to push each other's buttons, and it's just so damn entertaining to see. And it's all the movies about like odd couples and everything. It really is one of those ones that you can kind of look at as an example of, you know, how to do it. And what to, and how to reveal a character, because there's so many moments where it's like, you know, there's the little bits of information that we get about his ex-wife, and then the whole thing about what were you inferring back at your ex-wife's place? You know, she married a corrupt cop. And how it comes out, the whole backstory about him and Serrano, and you know, that's the same guy that you're getting paid to take me back to. Right. I think Ebert said this too, is that it almost plays out like you could almost read it as Charles Grodin is like this guardian angel that's sent down to teach him this valuable lesson. And that's where you kind of get like this mysticism about it, where at the end of the movie, when he sacrifices him and doesn't take the money and is just going to walk away, and then, hey, I got, you know, here's it's not a payoff,
you know what
it's a
like?
gift.
It's like Willy Wonka.
Sure.
Brings, you know, puts it back on the, you know, I mean, it's very.
And then there's that moment where he, you know, he's counting the money, and then he looks back and he's gone. Right. Which is, you know, somewhat of a cliche, but it's kind of like, you know, wow,
right.
Like, I finally learned this lesson.
Is he an instrument of change? You know. Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite character arcs. I thought about like Magnificent Obsession. That ended up becoming my favorite character arc in a film because of its purity. Right. And there's something about this that really sticks out. He goes through a lot, And it's about his willingness to learn that provides the change that I think he's been looking for, right? And the peace, just the mental peace, and like it's just really cool, man.
And thinking about it is like, you know, what better for a screenplay and for a character to, well, the guy that wants peace is the guy that is he's at his angriest right now. He's pissed off at life. He's pissed off that, you know, about what has happened to him. He's, you know,
he's tired of getting shot at. One of his first lines. I'm tired of getting shot at.
Tired of this miserable business.
Right.
And it's almost like that. Like the bank robber is like, you know, just this my one last job.
It's
to get the money.
It's almost like it's like Thief.
Yep.
Or later Carlito's Way.
Yeah.
Where you just wanna be out. You're ready to just move on from that life.
But it's like the inverse, because a bounty hunter is not necessarily a bank robber. He's not breaking the law. He's just kind of operating. He's kind of like a private detective, where he's just kind of operating just outside of it. And he's willing to do the things, but he's got a code that he will not break.
Right. And Grodin grows to respect him. Throughout the film. Right. You know, just based on his, he didn't realize that he was a good guy. You know, I mean, I think it's like, it just says a lot about his character that he's willing to help him with his life, like early on. I mean, you don't always see that when someone's literally bringing you to, you know, meet your destiny.
And it starts small. It's like, what am I doing? I'm doing arithmetic. Maybe I can help. I am an accountant.
Right. That's a great line. You know, a couple interesting things I found out. So, Grodin's line about the handcuffs beginning to pinch was an improv line, because he literally has permanent scars to this day.
Wow. From
the handcuffs being on his wrists the entire time, pretty much almost. And then Kodo's talking about the film, and he says that Martin Brest, like that he was like, he like lost all this weight and was like really like unhealthy looking, and he was like concerned for him, and it was like almost a distracting thing, because he's like, he remembers when he met him, and he was like, he was healthy, and you know, it's just like, and
Martin Brest, or
Martin Brest.
Wow.
And then Kodo had a fever throughout the whole film and was sick. It's just like, and he said it was he said it was not a good experience for me working on that film. Wow. So when it came out, I was like, oh, this is a good film. He's like, that's not tied to my feelings of, you know, it's just really interesting to think about what someone's experiences can be. And it doesn't sound like Brest was working it. I mean, maybe he was consumed with making it a success, and it just wasn't eating, you know? And it's just crazy to think about.
Yeah. He's in the movie.
Is he?
He's at the end when Dorfla goes up and he's like, and he's the guy that says smoking or non-smoking. He's like, take a wild guess.
Yeah, I love that line. It's great. Yeah.
Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You got the whole force out of him.
Oh, there's some lines I just wanted to touch on. I'm gonna stab you through the heart with a pencil. So you pissed off a mafioso killer just to be loved by a bunch of strangers? That makes a lot of sense. God, it's so good.
And that's what I love about that scene is that he's like, I didn't think I'd get caught. Oh, so you're aware of your behaviors, and yet you do.
When he flips it on him? Yeah. When Farina goes, relax, have a cream soda.
Do something.
A cream soda? What? Who says that? It's just random. But it's just a cool, specific line. Like, there's humor in specificity. And relax, have a soda would not be funny.
Right.
But a cream soda, that's pretty damn specific. And then, you don't look much like a criminal. I'm a white-collar criminal. Just stuff like that, man. I'm sorry that my fugitive timetable doesn't coincide with your social calendar.
I don't think that's what she was saying.
And then, dude, I love when they're walking out of his ex's house, and DeNiro, he has this newfound respect for Grodin, and the door, so that his jacket doesn't get stuck in the door.
Yeah.
I mean, just something a little like that can reveal so much about a character's trajectory. Right. And then, for every shit, there's 6 nice people. I mean, who writes stuff like that? It's just great. Like, how do you even think about that? Like, it's just a great line. And then I love the way he flips it on him. I thought you loved to travel by train. I mean, there's so many great opportunities for stuff like that.
Right.
And then
I have to tell you, I have a very strong fear of flying. Well, why don't you just relax and sleep?
Oh man.
I like when he does the his credit card isn't working.
Yep.
And then Alonzo, Jack Walsh, and he's
that
like,
wasn't the name on the card.
And the way Grodin's like, good for you.
I love at the ending, one of the best endings ever, I think. He goes, would have been a nice coffee shop. And then, how much is here? Neighborhood of 300,000. It's a very respectable neighborhood. God, that's a great line. And then see you in the next life, man. Yeah. Like, God. Just that's how you write a screenplay, man. The heart of this movie is its screenplay, because it allows 2 gifted actors to create this. And Brest just finds the right tone. So it's like, it's a lot of great people working together.
Right. And it's a good lesson in how it's not the most beloved genre, kind of like the horror movie, the slasher film or whatnot, because there is a lot of crap out there.
And The Hard Way is pretty similar to this. Not as good,
right?
But same dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, you can go through Bulletproof.
Yeah.
Even
there's so many of them.
Stuff,
God.
Right.
Well, and then even like the movies where 2 convicts are attached by leg cuffs. Was it like the original was Sidney Poitier and Tony Curtis.
The Defiant Ones.
Right, and then eventually fled. Right. But just that dynamic of being stuck together.
Yep.
And you can't stand, and then through that friendship grows.
It's funny. I was thinking about this because the 2 movies were Jaws and this, and the 2 collections that I was collecting were one's 50 science fiction giant monster movies, and Jaws is like, how do you take that and elevate it to an A movie? And the same thing, like the action movie, it's all there. You get what you want from an action movie, but how do you elevate it with?
And I feel
characters?
like approach it with purity.
Yeah.
And don't aim for exploitation.
Right.
Just because the oft-repeated theme in this genre is exploitation doesn't mean you have to go there.
And it's all you don't have to be afraid of formula, or at least starting with it.
Right.
Then it's your job to, hide it or polish it, or how can I take it? What's important to me? It's not the car chases.
You know what?
And the guns.
The formula has to be the clothing.
Yeah.
The accessories, not the engine, not the being. It can't be that, or else that's all it is. I mean,
more great. When he at the end, so he's in the FBI office. He's been taken in, and he's sitting there, and he's putting it together, and then he calls the 2 thugs, and the first line is too late for you, and he's like, oh, no, too late for you. You hear me, you mother. And just the way his level of anger and the animosity, and just that you're not gonna get it over on me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get this thing. It's just great, man. In a lot of ways, it's such a different role. It's such a unique role for him.
Mm-hmm.
But
I love that he wanted the challenge.
Yeah.
You know, because comedy is the hardest thing.
And what you had mentioned last night, that something he had said in an interview about Grodin, where you thought he was complimenting him.
Yeah, right.
What was it?
It basically was like, he goes, I really think he was integral to the success of this film because, you know, Chuck he can be play an annoying guy. And that was really, like, that worked really well or something. I don't know, like, it was just something about him being annoying.
Right.
Or being really good at being annoying. And maybe it was an oversimplification, but I get what he's trying to say.
Right.
You know, that's what allows, because it's not just him being annoying and DeNiro reacting. It's about so much more, but that does need to be there. And you do need to feel that irritation, right? And be able to relate to it and be like, oh, I get it.
And I love how it all comes down to, it's just, Grodin's going to find a thing and not let go of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when he's talking about, he's like, about the restaurant, he said, it's a very tricky business. And as your accountant, I would just want to steer you away from that. And there's a point where he's like, he's trying to, and he's just like, and then at the end, or close to the end, they lost the vehicle and they're walking up the street, and he's like, have you ever heard of a Lyonnaise potato?
Yeah.
It's this kind of, and he's just going through it, and then he just stops and he's just, will you just shut the fuck up? and then the truck comes, and the whole thing, Yat hey everyone, Yat hey. What is that? It's hello. I can say hello in a lot of different languages. Not yours, but a lot of them.
Not yours.
How far is the next town? 30 miles. And he's like, 30 miles, Jesus. And he's walking in and he's like, holy shit, there's 6 nice people in the back of this truck.
Yeah.
Or when they get into town and there's the truck, and he goes in and he's gonna jump start the truck.
Right.
And the way Grodin is just like, oh no, are you kidding? People are gonna come out and shoot us, for Christ's sakes. What the hell? and he's like, you get it started and I'll run you over. That's the best plan that I can come up with right now. He's so good, man.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that was another reason why I was worried of, like, not revisiting it and finding out that it's not as good as I remember, but also that because you had never seen it, it's like, oh shit,
right, especially not having a connection, nostalgic connection to it.
Right.
And also, you know, having never seen it, they do a good job of selling that Charles Grodin does have a fear of flying. Mm-hmm. Right? So, and Charles Grodin's acting in that is great. And not only that, but Mardukas' acting in that is great, right? Because, like, you believe, just like DeNiro believes, that he is seriously has a phobia.
Right.
Like, because just those, like, involuntary things, it's, like, amazing, man. Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. So if you are feeling like your life and your security are in jeopardy, you're going to do the things you need to do, man. And it's great. just when he finds out that just the look of basically telling DeNiro to eat shit, or like or like
when
eat
he's in
crow.
the plane.
Oh, it's so great when he takes the plane. Oh,
what a great way. That's a great set. That shot of like it's just on the ground. He gets up to him.
Yeah.
And then the plane takes off and he's holding on to it.
Yeah.
That, and there's so many there's so many great set pieces. The car chases and everything, they're great. But then that set piece and the set piece with the helicopter when he shoots the thing, which is I remember when we talked about Lonely Are the Brave, a similar thing because he shoots.
Oh right,
But that whole thing when they're driving, the helicopter comes up and shoots at it, and the hood flies up, and by the way, that whole scene, their reactions to it, and Charles Grodin, where he's just like, Jesus Christ, and DeNiro, shut the fuck. All of it is just great, and that Marvin doesn't want to give him the gun. He's giving the gun, Marvin.
Right.
And then he thinks like you think like, oh, they're united because they're getting after this thing. He shoots the plane down, and Marvin's like, "You got him, huh?" And then he does the.
And I love when like Pantaleano tries to coax his ego by being like, you're the one that. You're the top one, so we tried to get you, and we could,
Tried to get you,
so
we
ended up getting Jack.
But he's fucking it up. I don't know why you keep hiring this guy.
Right. Oh, man. Looks like it's your lucky day in the motel room.
Can I at least get some French fries? I said no, Becker Breath. Now shut up.
I did write down just some of the people involved. First of all, I mean, Danny Elfman. It's like what a diverse career he's had,
and it's a really great score,
and it fits.
Yeah,
right. And his ability to not just do an Elfman-esque, right? Just because he did a certain type of score with Burton,
right?
That's not the same score that works for this, right? That's a very flexible composer.
Yeah. And to think he did this at the same time that he did Beetlejuice.
He's doing all those movies.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty cool. Who was it? So the cinematographer shot Thief. This is first film. Tango and Cash, Golden Child, Purple Rain, Officer and a Gentleman, and the original Bad Boys. And Scent of a Woman, which I think is kind of an overrated film, but I would be willing to go back and watch it again. But we've talked about Chris Lebenzon on the show before because he edited Ed Wood. But I mean, yeah, he is a very decorated editor. And there were 3 editors that all were like Michael Tronick did Beverly Hills Cop 2, Less Than Zero, True Romance, Blue Streak, Remember the Titans, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Straight Outta Compton. And then Billy Weber, Badlands, Days of Heaven, The Warriors, 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Top Gun. I mean, Thin Red Line, Tree of Life, good God.
And I really think I think Billy Weber is kind of like a William Goldman type of figure in that especially for Universal at this time, because I think a lot of those films are Universal films, it's like, if there's a movie that's in trouble or the editing's not going as smoothly or they're having trouble,
he's kind of like the film whisperer.
Yeah.
He'll come in and just know exactly what to do.
Right.
Almost like Rick Rubin, basically, in music.
Sure.
Bring him in because he has the ear.
Right.
Yeah. Damn. Art director, James J. Murakami. War Games, Beverly Hills Cop 2, True Romance, Crimson Tide, The Game, Enemy of the State. I mean, and art direction is something that could be overlooked in this film, but if you think about just the overall look to a film, I mean, I really think the art director is so crucial in sort of informing the visual identity of the film as much as cinematography is.
And to think that
the look.
What do we go from? So New York to Chicago to Arizona to L.A. and it
capturing the identities of those places and really having it change the way that film feels in those moments.
And I bet if you really study it, the beginning of the film where they start does not look like what the ending.
Right.
Even though they're probably in similar, it's probably count how many airports, train stations, stuff that they go to, and probably each one has its own distinct feel and look to them.
It would seem arbitrary with this film, but costume design, Gloria Gresham. Just it's interesting just that while it's not necessarily something you notice in a film like this, the person working on this film did Diner, Footloose, The Natural, Fletch, Twins, Ghostbusters 2, When Harry Met Sally, War of the Roses, Misery, Kindergarten Cop, Few Good Men, on and on and on. Like, it's just, yeah. There's just nothing.
That leather coat.
There's just, oh yeah, right. That's true. There's just nothing. There's nothing spared, and I think that the fact that you want someone that's that good at their job, it really just makes it so that you don't necessarily notice because it just seems like what those people would wear, right. Or like it just seems to fit. And you want the world of the film to be populated in a way that you don't question it, right? I mean,
well, one thing I wanted to mention was the ending when Dennis Farina and Robert DeNiro finally come together. All we get is we get them separately, and then we get the kind of like the little bit of backstory about that he basically kind of like a Donnie Brasco type thing where he was working undercover with them. Mm. It took me a year just to get his confidence. And then and when they come together, like you see that they're two people that not only like know each other and have this grudge and have this opposition, but that they did have some kind of respect for each other.
Right. The only way that can work is if it is, if there is some sort of, I don't know if you watched 24, but like season 3 when he goes undercover in the drug world, like the only way that, and like you said, Donnie Brasco, the only way that works is if there's a genuine connection. Right. Yeah.
And you see that, and then you see the kind of like the little digs that they have where it's like, your daughter's getting big, growing up, all that kind of thing, and then just that fucking line where he's just like, doesn't it bother you to know that another copper is fucking your wife?
Right.
And De Niro's just like, you know what it's doing to him in here,
right?
But he knows he can't. You're not gonna get out of me. And just knowing what's coming and hopefully what's coming, that kind of lends the whole tension and suspense to that scene, because you know how vicious he can be, so he could find a way to get out of it.
Right.
And man, I mean, that they build suspense out of a microphone not working, and that's enough.
Right.
That's enough to just get you so crazy.
I mean, it probably isn't the influence for it, but it makes me think of Half-Baked. Abracadabra. And the two guys they get high in the van and they're reading his love letter to Mary Jane, and they think he wrote it to weed. Like, it's almost the exact same thing that happens, but yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that you liked it, man.
Yeah, man.
Still a great movie. I think there's just a lot of great lessons to learn from it.
Definitely.
And it's just a very enjoyable movie, and if you love, as we do, that action comedy genre that they don't really do much anymore.
Well, and you always knew that there were going to be a lot of actors, a lot of character actors in those films, and that's what makes it fun too, is to see certain actors at that point in their careers. Yeah,
that's kind of what I wanted to talk about too. Is it's a shame that Martin Brest seemed to even before Midnight Run and Beverly Hills Cop, there was the original Going in Style that he did. And they're three in their own right strong films. Then he does Scent of a Woman that I agree is highly overrated. And then Meet Joe Black, and then Geely. It's like he really had a bad run of it
Yeah.
towards the end.
Right.
But that's why it's also kind of good to look back at this to see, what was there. Like he really had a kind of a knack for this kind of mashup and making it work.
Right.
And I think there's a lot to be said, one for DeNiro and Grodin, but also for him to kind of come in and know, I know how to do this stuff from Beverly Hills Cop, but I think there's a way for me to kind of go even above that, and do something a little deeper and a little stronger. And damn if he doesn't do it.
I think something that gets maybe lost in the mix sometimes, and maybe it's assumed because you would assume that if someone's like a great actor, then they do. But it's like De Niro's intelligence, like a really smart guy, like he really understands his knack for like searching for the truth, and not even just smart, but like really like admirable, like his preparation and his and then watching the sit down of The Irishman and watching like just the way he talks and the way I don't know, it's just really like he has an intellectual curiosity.
Right.
He's a storyteller.
Right.
Like you really feel that with him.
Right.
And it makes me want to go back and watch The Good Shepherd again, because I remember like really not liking it.
Yeah.
Like really not liking it, thinking it was overlong and everything. But there might be some gems in there. There might be some great scenes that you could, and I always think it's worth watching stuff.
A Bronx Tale is strong.
Right, that's true.
But yeah, I had a similar thing with The Good Shepherd, that thinking that it was wrong, thinking that Angelina Jolie was miscast. And, but yeah, and there was something that I always liked about knowing the fact that he was kind of socially inept and awkward in interviews, and not wanting to talk about.
I think he's usually the smartest person. I think he's used to being the smartest person in the room. Like I really do, and that's something that you may not necessarily think because of his on-screen persona, and it's too bad, because people just think things about. It's like, oh yeah, just because this character he's playing. It's like, no, like that's a person that became that person.
Right.
Okay, like he is, and it's the same with Brando. Streetcar Named Desire comes out, people are like, oh, you can't even, what are you saying? I can't even hear what you're saying.
Right.
You're mumbling.
Right.
It's like, then he does Shakespeare, and it's like, oh, you speak with perfect diction. It's like, okay, because you're doing Shakespeare. It's like similar actors, where it's just so raw and so real. And
And it's so nice when you have, like usually in a two-hander like this, you can sometimes go back and forth, but you're like, I'm always going to land on the side of this person.
Right.
But with these two, it's like they really do have an equal equilibrium to them, where it's like, one person isn't the same without the other,
and that makes them
versa.
Realer as characters, right? And actual humans, and not these just broad strokes. It's like ideas of characters, or like archetypes. It's like it really avoids that. It's really like, no, these are two people, and sometimes you're going to agree with them, and sometimes you're not. Which is what sets this film apart in the genre.
It really does, and it's what makes the ending as strong and affecting as it is. And that, usually with these movies, it's like, there's the shootout, and then that's it. And it's not often that you kind of get those extra two scenes.
There's no unnecessary moments in the film either, which is a testament to, I think, 3 editors in the room.
Right. And
like you said, with maybe Weber being like the most seasoned of the 3, being really shaping this thing.
And that might have been the thing too. It's like, it is pretty, right now it's 2 hours and 5 minutes, which is kind of hefty for a film like this.
Right.
You would probably think that, maybe their first or
it's almost like it better be worth it, right? If you're making a movie like this over 2 hours, it better have more legs to stand on than a formulaic ride, right? Yeah. Cool, man.
All right. So we're back. We got 2 more of these things.
Yep. We're back next week.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, 3 more of these things.
Right.
Shattered Glass.
Right.
Yep. And then Ashes and Diamonds.
And then finishing with
Champion.
Cannot wait.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
But yeah, next week with Shattered Glass.
All right.
All right. Good to be back, man.
Yeah, definitely, man.